Black technology, an anomaly in the world of Fullmetal Panic. Most of the technology that drives the mecha in this universe, known as arm slaves, are largely grounded in the real robot genre. Arm slaves themselves, along with the other Black technology they use, such as the Electronic Conceal System, or AI, can be reasonably argued to be able to come about through more conventionally developed means. However, much of it was fast-tracked by the knowledge of the Whispered, humans with innate information about this technology. But out of all of them, the one piece of Black technology I want to touch on in this video is the Lambda Driver. This one stands alone as having the most consequential impact in the series, as well as a far deeper meaning when getting into the last 3 volumes of the light novel. The first part of this video will cover what we know from the anime, and then we'll get into its true nature from the novels, so obvious spoilers ahead. It goes further than just being highly advanced tech, it begs deeper questions, so let's get into it. The Lambda Driver, recognized as the False Axis Repulsive Field Generator System, is pure Black technology. No one in the series, not even the Whispereds who developed it, truly understand it. In essence, it uses the will of the pilot to exert mechanical force with no observable physical interaction. This can be used to increase the power of weaponry and attacks to varying degrees, as well as applying protective barriers and even fly. Since there is no opposite reaction of the force applied when utilizing the Lambda Driver, it directly contradicts Newton's third law of motion, which states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. This does not happen with the Lambda Driver, as it does not have physical momentum when applying torque. The false axis is in reference to this. Without an opposite reaction and the projection of the pilot's will, things like the Lambda Strike seen in episode 13 of the second raid are possible, as well as the Belial's freeform flying. As far as the widespread use of this technology, most of Amalgam's ASs use Lambda Drivers. Really, they're the only ones to, other than Sosuke and his units. This puts Mithril at a disadvantage for the most part, but their non-Lambda Driver equipped M9s have been able to put Lambda Driver equipped ASs down through smart teamwork or general craftiness. The Lambda Driver comes with its own weaknesses, however, such as overheating when used for too long, which has been seen in the Plan 1056 Kodarls. The ponytail fibers they used were upgraded to a better heatsink fin located in the back of the units, and is used when the Lambda Driver is deployed. This development happened in the Kodaral variant Plan 1058 Kodaral I, and carried over into the Plan 1065 Aragor, which were designed for the ace pilots of Amalgam. The Aragor is also the latest of the Generation 3 arm slaves, which brings me to the Belial, Amalgam's only 4th generation arm slave. While it has the greatest specs of any AS, in addition to the Lambda Driver, its major weaknesses is its over-reliance on it, utilizing it for protection, attacks with its bow, and its flight capabilities. Mithril, in response to Amalgam's overuse of the Lambda Driver, had Mirakudan, the one who created the ARX-8 Leviatane, implement the Fairy Wings, a Lambda Driver canceller onto the Levitane's shoulders. When active, it deactivates Lambda Drivers in the general area. However, it also cancels the Levitanes, so it was mainly used as a trump card against Leonard and when Sosuke was outnumbered by Lambda Driver-equipped ASs during the raid on Merida Island. Without it, Sosuke would have no chance against Leonard and the Belial, and this proved true during the climax of the Merida Island raid in Volume 12. With these things in mind, it begs major questions of morality when using it. The pilot requires strong mental fortitude to properly utilize the Lambda Driver. But in the case of the Plan 1051, or Behemoth, seen in episode 11 of Season 1, the pilot Takuma, while having received training for the Lambda Driver that keeps the Behemoth intact, was also under the influence of drugs to further enhance their use of it. Constant use of the Lambda Driver in this way puts immense stress on the pilot, so the drugs were used to keep the pilot going and focused. It also questions the use of weaponizing human emotion. Manipulation of the pilot's emotions have been seen in the show, such as when Chidori told Sosuke what would happen to her if he lost and she was captured. While the outcome was positive and necessary for Sosuke to save them, it still required manipulation of his emotions to bring out the use of the Lambda Driver. Note that at this point Sosuke hadn't received any training for the Lambda Driver, and he was able to use it properly by the end of the series. However, the implication of this kind of use is questionable. Amalgam has no problem getting their hands dirty when giving their personnel objectives, but Mithril is more of a force for good, and wouldn't rely on drug use or psychologically manipulating their pilots. That being said, they have only ever had one Lambda Driver equipped unit at a time, those being the ARX-7 Arbalest and the ARX-8 Levitane, along with their sole pilot, Sosuke, so he was alone in making use of the Lambda Driver. One thing I have to mention here though is Al, the AI Sosuke uses in the Arbalest and Levitain, is intrinsically tied to the Lambda Driver, but I'll go more into that in the next section. Which brings us to the last 3 volumes of the original light novel. In Volume 10, Approaching Nick of Time, Chapter 3, titled Yamsk 11, while Tessa and Sosuke are infiltrating the abandoned Siberian town of the same name, she divulges the information she's learned about the true nature of the Whispered and Black technology. In short, the plant they are in is ground zero for an experiment conducted by a scientist known as Dmitry Valov. He was researching the Omnisphere. Tessa refers to this as the world of the mind, a realm created by the human mind. It's on a different plane of existence than the world as they know it, and both it and the physical world mutually influence each other. Full access to the Omnisphere can allow for near-limitless precognition of events not yet transpired. It's explained that déjà vu is a slight precognitive effect of the Omnisphere. It allows for telepathy, something we've seen Whispereds do already, even slight telekinesis. She goes on to say humans have been using the Omnisphere to influence the world every day, though the effect is minuscule. While humans on their own have a slight capacity of influence on the Omnisphere, a certain piece of black technology was created to enable the Omnisphere's full influence on the physical world. A system that is able to convert the user's imagination, or will, into physical power. This is where the Lambda Driver comes in. She goes on to explain that the name is a camouflage. Lambda indicates repulsion. However, that's not exactly what it's doing. It actually amplifies the paraphysical phenomenon that results from the influence of the Omnisphere. Thus, it acts more like a reactor. The real name for the Lambda Driver is the Omnisphere High-Speed Chained Influence Reactor. While humans use Omnisphere influence on a micro level, the Lambda Driver uses a chain reaction to amplify them. For this to be achieved, however, the Lambda Driver needs a similar vehicle to that of the human body. Tanks, warships, and aircraft cannot utilize the Lambda Driver. But armed slaves, which mimic human systems with its artificial brain, the AI, and nervous system, the muscle packages, along with a human pilot to channel the Omnisphere influence, are essential to the Lambda Driver's use. Tessa gives Sosuke the 3 criteria for a vehicle's eligibility for Lambda Driver integration: a high-output engine, specs to engage in dangerous combat situations, and a humanoid structure. The amount of electricity needed to produce this high level of Omnisphere influence is far more than a regular human could survive, thus the armed slave is the perfect simulacrum for it. Leonard has been aware of this for some time, which is why his Belial makes heavy use of it, because he knows exactly what it's capable of. Sosuke, on the other hand, does not, which made it more beneficial for him to use the fairy wings on the Levitain to even out a 1v1, since the Belial would be far more disadvantaged than the Levitain without a Lambda Driver, despite the Belial having better specs regardless. For the final part of the section, I want to bring up Al, the Levitain's AI, and Sosuke's partner. At the end of Volume 12, while the nuke from the Afghanistan base was making its way towards Merida Island, Sosuke had found his way back to the Levitain after abandoning it briefly to deal with Leonard and Kalinin. Chidori and Tessa had already escaped the island, but Sosuke was left behind. The Taros and the Levitain was destroyed, so Sosuke himself could not activate the Lambda Driver, and the clock was ticking. Right before the nuke went off, Al asked Sosuke a simple question: am I human, or am I a machine? At this point, Sosuke knew it was more complicated than that, so he decided to tell Al, "You decide that for yourself, that's what all humans do." After that, Al thanks Sosuke and tells him he's going to try activating the Lambda Driver himself. He's successful, and is able to protect himself and Sosuke from the nuclear explosion. And just like the ending of Volume 12, Chapter 5, Proof of Humanity, I'll leave it at that. Honestly, the final 3 volumes of Full Metal Panic was an amazing read, and I really hope it gets animated one day. I decided to make this video because of the lack of a final season, and the fact that there really isn't any content on YouTube explaining these important plot points from the series, so I hope you enjoyed this video. And let me know if you'd like to see videos going over other topics explained in the last 3 volumes of the series, such as the Whispered and Black technology in general. Let me know your thoughts on the Lambda Driver, I'd love to hear them. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video to support my mecha content. It's always greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.